Hi folks, Canadian Prepper here. So this video is going to be a continuation of the video I just did entitled After the Collapse, How to Survive Longer. I want to elaborate on a few of those concepts, and I want to talk about a common misconception about the brains versus brawn and which one is more important for you to focus on in terms of your preparedness planning. Also, stay tuned at the end of this video. We're going to be checking out some t-shirt designs that I have had done up. And I want to get some feedback about those to see if it's something that I should be pursuing. They're motivational t-shirts with a survival slant, so stick around for that. But first, let's talk about brains versus brawn. Alright, so one of the main criticisms I get on most of the physical fitness videos that I've done, and I've done a few, I've done a significant amount over the years, is that you should be focusing more on skills and that people who are well trained in firearms are just going to be able to shoot you regardless of how physically fit you are. Now obviously that's a very narrow-minded criticism because there's very few situations, I think, even in a grid down situation where it's just going to be a hail of bullets and you're going to be running and gunning. I think in most situations, when we talk about physical fitness, we're talking about healthcare, just longevity, not dying of disease. If you can take care of your body and bring it to tip-top conditions so that when this technological apparatus that keeps us alive right now, which really is a life support system, if you think of like the emergency medical system, the prescription drugs, big pharma, all of those things that people have grown dependent on to supplement their poor lifestyle health choices are not going to be there. That's really the main focus of physical preparedness. It's not just about running and gunning and be able to kick some ass melee style. It's really about having a low body fat percentage to avoid certain types of disease. It's about eating properly, making sure that you have all the nutrients so that your immune system is good if there was some sort of pandemic, or if the waste management systems weren't functioning optimally after SHTF, then you're able to just endure that. Because if you are very out of shape and you're reliant on medicine or you're reliant on something which is grade-based, you might not have that. Whether it's insulin or other prescription medication, you don't want to be dependent on those things. So do whatever you can now to focus on that. Don't be revolving your prepping around firearms and bug out bags and things like that when you have chronic health conditions. That's sort of what I'm saying here. Now, with respect to brains and brawn, these things are not mutually exclusive. Okay, you can have big brains and also be very brawny. Okay, I know most of the people who train and who have very good physiques and who are very physically fit, they're not stupid people. They're very successful people. They're very well-off people in a lot of ways. So there's a big misconception, and I think a lot of it is just an excuse that people use. It's a way to justify their lack of commitment to their own physical health. So they justify it by saying, oh, well, yeah, but, yes, but he's not good at firearms, or yes, but he can't field dress an animal, or he can't garden, or she can't whatever, build stuff or fix machines, things of that nature. Other preparedness attributes that you're going to want to work on as well. But that doesn't necessarily mean that, because in most cases, being physically fit, you're going to have a healthier mind. You're going to be able to think better. You're going to be able to make better decisions. You're also going to be able to manage your adrenaline better, because exercise in itself, if you really try to push yourself, beyond yourself and out of your comfort zone, can be a form of stress inoculation training. And what that is getting your body used to managing that high heart rate and the adrenaline that gets released when you're in a stressful situation. So your ability to put yourself out of your comfort zone and persevere through hardship and your own self-defeating thoughts that you might be floating around in your head when you're, that are telling you that, hey, you should stop, you should just go home and eat a bunch of junk food and sit on the couch and do nothing, and, go to the doctor tomorrow and get some medication to supplement this unhealthy lifestyle. It's overcoming that which is acclimating you to the stress of the post-collapse world, where a lot of these technologies, amenities, and luxuries that we enjoy right now, they're simply not going to be there. So brain versus brawn are like this. There is no distinction between mind and body. Body is mind, mind is body. So if you're working on one, the other must improve. Indeed, some people perhaps can go overboard with their training. There's only so many hours in a day. But that said, the same people I see criticizing people for training too much themselves are either out of shape or they're unemployed, or they're pointing the finger at somebody else to take attention away from the shortcomings in their own life. Now, I can relate to this because there was a time when I was very out of shape. About 5-6 years ago, I think it's almost 6 years ago now, I weighed about 135 pounds. I was a chain smoker, as many of you know. I was doing some other things that I shouldn't have been doing at the time. And I started to get involved in this preparedness thing, and it motivated me. It motivated me in the sense that I realized that I would be responsible for myself. There was some realization along the way that if something ever were to happen, that nobody would be coming to save me, and that it would be me and me only who would be responsible for my well-being and my family's well-being. So that prompted me to make some changes. Now, when I started out, I was about 135 pounds. I was pretty ripped. I was an ectomorph slash mesomorph. I actually call it a mectomorph, if any of you are familiar with that whole somatotype classification system. But I was a bit of a mectomorph. And now I'm about 185 to 190. I fluctuate. Everybody fluctuates 5 pounds water weight and glycogen levels and whatnot. I have a body fat percentage which was the same as when I was 135. So I've put on a lot of muscle mass. Now, some people say, oh, well, you can't use muscle for this and you can't use muscle for that. And it's all just to justify their own lack of commitment in those areas. Now, I'm not boasting about this because there's nothing special about going out and exercising. There's absolutely nothing whatsoever that makes me, feel at all, that I am somehow superior human being for simply doing that. Yes, I pride myself on the commitments and dedications I make and choosing to go for that 15-kilometer run every other night and not just, sitting around watching YouTube, which is fine. Got to watch YouTube. But you also gotta take care of yourself. So I can humbly say that yes, I've made progress, but when I was at that 135 mark, I made all sorts of excuses. I would say things like, oh, that guy must be on steroids, or, I would say, oh, I wonder what he's overcompensating for, or, I would justify things in my head like, well, yeah, but, you're probably weak at this, or you're deficient at that. All types of things just to justify my own inadequacy in that respect. Now I realize that you can have a lot of non-physical, practical skill sets and be very physically fit. Like there's that character in the Mad Max film with the little guy on the back who's the brains, and he's carried around by this big guy who's just a moron, but obviously he's built like a brick shit house. And, he's this little guy on his back, he's kind of the brains, and he runs Bartertown. It's that whole misconception, it's a stereotype. It's not true. So the whole point of this video is just take the time to focus on your physical fitness. Don't make excuses. As Jim Morrison said, nobody gets out of here alive, okay? So we're all gonna die at some point. The whole point of survivalism and prepping is to allow yourself, your progeny, and your community to have some measure of quality of life and hopefully live as long as possible and secure some sort of future. But eventually we're all going to die, so it's not just about staying alive forever. But the only way you can achieve that is if you first and foremost have health. And let's talk about this t-shirt idea, because I got some cool t-shirt designs I've been working on. At least I think they're cool. So I'm going to show them to you here, and you tell me what you think of them, and if you have any other ideas for what you might like to see on a t-shirt. I wanted to make t-shirts that didn't just scream, I'm a survivalist, crazy prepper type person. I wanted them to be things which were motivational, but which also might get other people thinking about survivalism and preparedness when they've seen you wearing it. But things which aren't going to evoke that stigma against prepping that many of us face on a daily basis. Alright, so these are just a couple of the designs that are in the works. I'm going to do a whole video on all of the designs that I have coming out. If you guys have any other ideas that you would like to shoot me, feel free to send me a personal message. You can do so via YouTube. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. Canadian Prepper out.
Check out the Canadian Preppers Network blog, an excellent resource for survivalists and preppers.